52 minutes in here. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks for 1,000 people. Now we have to poo-poo on all of that and talk about the center competition.
Yay!
We have talked so much about this. This has definitely been like the biggest topic of the offseason. Jim Harbaugh comes out and says yesterday, essentially what we have predicted for the entire offseason, that Bradley Bozeman is going to start at center. Zion Johnson is going to start at left guard. He feels like those two players are in their best 5 combination, and that's how they have operated. Competitors welcome, all that stuff. Essentially, the Zion center competition resulted in 3 padded practices, 12 snaps in the preseason. We'll see. He says that they might do it again on Sunday. But here we are in the place that we always expected to be, with Bradley Bozeman projected at center, Zion Johnson projected at left guard. What are your thoughts, Tyler?
Look, our show may not always be the most entertaining, despite all my dabs that I just did, because people said I did a dab earlier. We may talk for too long. We're 52 minutes in, and we're just finally getting to our second topic. But I do believe we always try to keep it real. And unfortunately, I smelled BS from the jump. I mean, if I go back to February, I said I thought this Zion thing was, not significant, and that it was just going to be, I get some cute media speak. You can go back and listen to it. I was like, I don't know about this. I smell BS. I'm cynical. Don't believe it's going to be much. We spent months heading up to free agency telling you that Bradley Bozeman was going to be back. And, in May, I went on some 10-minute thing about, here's the 10 financial, playing time, health, film, statistical reasons why Bradley Bozeman's going to be the starting center over Andre James. And I had to hold that opinion against Chargers fans for a very long time here. So the end result here, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't surprise me. And it's kind of what we have been discussing for a while now and what we've expected. But what frustrates me is the process by which we got here, and especially at center, because this is their tip of the spear. This is the cerebral position for them. This is so important to this offense. And we know that as Chargers fans, because we saw with Lindsley, without Lindsley, with Pouncey, without Pouncey. We know how this works. And the Ravens with Joe Ortiz, they had kind of tried this center, that or center, UDFA, 5th round pick sort of thing, and they could make it work. But with Linderbaum, big difference. And they've seen that. Joe Ortiz has seen that. And they didn't take advantage of anything last year. But okay, the interior offensive line didn't work out last year. But it's year one. You learn. You can get better, or so we would hope. But then they bring Bozeman back, and they bring in Andre James, which I still think is a good decision, a good signing. Even if now he is just the backup center, that is still a good signing. But then they feign this idea that Zion Johnson could actually play center. Wow, we really think he could be a really good center, despite never asking him to do that last year.
Yeah.
It just, this whole competitors welcome thing. I love Jim Harbaugh. I did handstands for Harbaugh. He was my number one option. But I hope that, like I say, we always try to keep it real. I hope we can also call out what kind of just feels like BS to me. Because like you said, this Zion Johnson, this center competition was Zion Johnson getting 3 padded practices late in the process and 12 preseason snaps, as you said. And sure, maybe he could play another preseason game. It's over. When Jim Harbaugh says this is the projected lineup, it's basically over. And the worst part is it just also happens for left guard too. The loser of this competition is going to now be the left guard. Yeah. And it's when has that ever happened? I'm genuinely trying to think of when in Chargers history the loser of a position battle ends up still starting as an actual starter. And I don't mean wide receiver 3 becomes wide receiver 4, an actual 100% of the snaps starter. I don't remember that ever happening. Yeah. And they both get to play at the same time. The competition was just whichever left guard, whichever center lost was their left guard. Jamari Sawyer loses weight, apparently looks pretty good. Not going to try him at all. He gets one practice with the ones for whatever reason, and that was it. Andre James brought in, never gets a shot with the first team center group. It's so frustrating that this just felt locked in since the spring. Like this was, if you really think about it, like it really just feels like this was locked in the spring, just like it was with Trey Pipkins last year, where they're like, yeah, Trey Pipkins is our starter to go. And we're like, well, are you sure you don't want to try like Jamari Sawyer? And Bradley Bozeman's our center. You don't want to like bring anybody else in? No.
Yeah.
So I am disappointed with this process. I'm disappointed that I kind of think we were bullshit the whole way on this, and that a lot of Chargers fans really bought into this, but it just kind of smelled like BS the whole way to me. And I'm bummed that, what is it? Almost 700 days since Corey Linsley took his last snap for the Chargers. We are nowhere closer to finding a center of the future. So overall, even though the result does not surprise me, I am disappointed with this entire process.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think all of us are very happy with the Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz experience up to this point. The way that they have handled the entire interior offensive line has been a disappointment. Going back to not drafting any potential center in the best center class in like the history of the NFL last year. They signed Sam Mustaver, to do that whole experience after giving Brendan Hymus the entire offseason of being the backup center last year. And then this year with all the stuff that, you laid out here, I can understand in a vacuum why they landed on Bozeman and Andre James being their like center solution, because this year's center options were not great. They could have tried to do the Ryan Kelly thing. If you have listened to him talk about it, him and Will Fries wanted to play together, and the Chargers didn't have the space to do both. Like they could have potentially made it work, but they were not getting both of those players. And so they go to Minnesota together, and Will Fries gets a massive 5-year contract for whatever that was. So there just weren't a lot of great options. So those two being the options in a vacuum, I understand. The draft class was horrible. The league hated it. There was 2 centers drafted. So I get that. I never once thought the Zion Johnson thing was real. The second they brought Bradley Bozeman back, I knew that was not going to be the case. If they were serious about playing Zion Johnson at center, he would have been the starting center right away. He would have been taking snaps with the first team offense at center the entire season, and they would have figured out left guard in some other capacity. So, like you said, I just feel like we were led astray a little bit with this. To me, it's just really frustrating. The entire offseason, you just don't even consider any other viable competitor for a potential starting position. And there was like a little bit there where Greg Roman was like, yeah, Jamari is going to be an option. Andre James is going to be an option. And then the next day, Jim Harbaugh was like, no, that's not happening. So it's just like, again, very, very happy overall with the experience. But the frustration here is just the lack of real consideration towards solving that spot. I think Mekhi Becton is going to elevate this run game. Like, he is an absolute house of a man, and he is going to change the run game. I do think he can take a step as a pass protector as well. I know like his pass blocking efficiency rating last year wasn't great. I think he can take a step forward. If he gets injured for any period of time, we are right back to the same interior trio that allowed Justin Herbert to get hit 16 times or whatever it was in Houston. And it's great that Jamari Sawyer has lost a lot of weight. That doesn't always change your ability as a player. So that part is frustrating. The just overall lack of competition is frustrating. The long-term aspect of this is not great. And I said this in the Discord here. The Chargers have so many free agents in this group. Zion, Jamari, Pipkins, and Andre James are all free agents after the season. I would expect at this current time that Bradley Bozeman is your starting center in 2026 as well. And I know Chargers fans do not want to hear that, but with the amount of free agents you have next year, it is extremely difficult to replace both of your starting center and left guard and all 3 of your main backups. Like, that's just not feasible for one offseason. So Bradley Bozeman is under contract for next year, and as it currently stands, I would expect him to start. And I know this is Keenan Allen Day, and I don't want to be that guy, and I don't want people to cause a freak out.
Sure.
But this team loves Bradley Bozeman. They love Zion Johnson. And it has led to such a poor process of trying to elevate the offensive line. And it's really frustrating. I get it. But for whatever reason, this is where we are. They have a ton of faith that Zion will figure it out. They love Bradley Bozeman's off the field stuff. And they think he's a great run blocker. And this is where we are at heading into the 2025 season.
Yeah, there's no argument, barring injury, you could make to where I would assume Bradley Bozeman isn't the starter next year. Because what are you going to say? Okay, well, imagine Bradley Bozeman has a bad pass protection season and isn't great, and the line isn't great, and he has his own struggles, and he's athletically limited, and he's not going to be, any better than he was moving forward. They still brought him back on those exact same arguments. With all that, they just did that.
We just did this.
Yeah. So what could he do other than this time, join the Saints player and beat the snot out of Herbert? What else could he do to not return to the team? So, and he's under contract. They had to actively bring him back. Now he's under contract, and they have maybe the Khalil Mack thing again. I don't know. Maybe they trade for Micah Parsons. Let's say they do that. Okay, well, which first? Oh, you don't have a first round pick to use on an interior position. Okay, well then it's messy. They've done nothing to prepare for the future. It's kind of the Ravens' MO for several years, under Ozzie, et cetera. It wasn't Joe Horty's decision. That it was kind of their MO for a while there. And I wonder, I'm very curious if they could go back, if they would have redone this, despite all their public praise and all their public supporting of these players. I wonder if Joe Horty could go back, if he could maybe have learned from this offseason and redone it, because it almost feels like, as an inexperienced guy. So one of the weaknesses of Joe Ortiz is that he was never doing the cap stuff, doing the free agent stuff. He was personnel, the draft, that sort of thing.
Scouting, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very curious if he maybe got a bit overwhelmed by, now granted, people spend a lot of money on these interior players, but I do kind of wonder if a more experienced guy would have navigated this interior spot a little bit better. Otherwise, everything is almost perfect. Sure, we could, this and that, whatever, but everything's been pretty much good. This has just been such a strange, glaring oversight by the team. I hope it works out. As we kind of close this thing out, I hope this works out. I still root for the Chargers. I root for Bradley Bozeman. I root for Zion Johnson and everybody. I hope it works out. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you all laugh and clip this out and say that we suck and we're stupid, blah, 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 blah. It's better for me that way. I hope to be wrong in this situation because the Chargers are good.
Yeah.
I just don't think I'm going to be.
Yeah. I think the potential regret is going to be from last season, not drafting one. So Junior Colson, again, we all love the pick. I'm not saying that I'm not happy about the pick. We'll see what happens. Cooper Beebe was 4 picks after that, and he's already a legitimate starting center for the Dallas Cowboys. Yep. Christian Haynes went after that. They could have taken him. He's a good player. We'll see about Zach Zinter. Dominic Pooney for the San Francisco 49ers was pick 86. He's been a good guard for the 49ers already. In the 4th round, you have, Tanner Borneliti, who we've mentioned, Mason McCormick. These are all guys who have started and been good players already. Cedric Van Pan Granger for the Bills went the pick after Cam Hart. Again, I'm very happy with Cam Hart, but would you rather have that right now? I don't know, man. And then obviously my guy Hunter Norzad in the 5th round, who's just gonna be chilling in Kansas City for the next 5 years because Creed Humphrey never misses games and stuff like that. So I think if you put Truth Serum in Joe Ortiz and asked him one thing he regrets, I think he would point to not taking an interior player last year. So it's tough, but I think this is where they're at. They're going to have to hammer interior in the next draft. And again, are you going to start 2 rookies in a potential Super Bowl push? I don't think so. So it's just, I hate to poo-poo on Keenan Allen coming back day, but the ending of this center quote unquote competition is just, it's easily my biggest complaint about the Harbaugh Ortiz experience. And to me, it's like a big stain on everything else because they have not handled it very well at all.
No, and it's such an obvious glaring weakness. It's almost a shock. It's a extremely obvious glaring weakness that kept them from winning meaningful games, including the playoffs. And it is specifically the area where Harbaugh loves.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Is guards. Their tackles were guards. Their centers were guards. The whole Michigan line was just a bunch of big guards. I don't know what happened. Like, they won not Joe Tippmann. What's the award?
Joe Moore
Award 2 times, I think, that Michigan, or they were runner-ups or whatever. Like this.
Yeah.
It just, I don't get it. It's an obvious weakness. It's what you love to do. It doesn't make any sense.
No
That's
sense.
like me declining white rice. It's impossible to imagine that happening. Like, no, thank you. Too much. I couldn't possibly. It's right there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Now, if you had told me 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever, hey, the Chargers are going to hire Jim Harbaugh, but they're only going to draft Joe Alt and then like some random 6th rounder. And I'll be like, no, you're crazy. Like, they're going to be taking offensive linemen up the wazoo.
Yeah.
So, they're going to have to draft interior offensive linemen heavily over the next couple of drafts. And this team also needs like a long-term defensive tackle piece. They need a long-term edge rusher replacement for Khalil at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So again, very positive. I think the arrow is pointing up for this franchise, but the way that they have handled this is easily the biggest complaint. And I don't think there's even a second, option there. Like, I don't know, man. Like, could they invest in a primary corner? Maybe. They've done a great job finding 5th round starting caliber corners in the 5th round. So it's just frustrating. If the Chargers don't hit their ceiling, I think it's going to be because of this interior group and because they didn't take the leap they needed as a run blocking unit. They still have the same pass protection unit questions. So it's just frustrating end to something that didn't need to be like this.